As I mentioned, Alabama wins this game by a score of 73-0. This was by far the biggest win Alabama's had in a very, very, very long time. Since 1951 was what the announcers said for in terms of a shutout. When you look at the way that Saban used to score, he, pretty famously would not go up any more than maybe 59-0. And even at that point, it really felt like he was having guys almost fall down. He just kind of was getting out of the game. This didn't feel like Kalen DeBoer was trying to run up the score, but this really felt like it was a situation of when you had in some of the backups, whether it be Austin Mack or Keelan Russell, you still wanted them to get legitimate reps in. You still wanted them to be, looking off safeties, trying to pick through coverage, actually completing passes. It didn't feel like Keelan Russell was only in the game to hand off the football, which I thought was really good to see, because that obviously shows the fact that you do trust in your backup quarterbacks, but that also just shows that you're trying to get them real reps, that if something happens and they do have to step into the game time, that they're going to be ready for that. So I did like seeing that. Obviously, I know some people are probably going to be upset by the fact that you ran it up, but I think this was a perfect kind of culmination of what Alabama needed in this game. If you will remember, if anyone watched my episode, kind of breaking down this game, I kind of considered this a show me game. I considered this a game of Alabama had been doing a lot of talking, and I wanted the team to show me what they had been talking about. Show me the type of defense that you're capable of. Show me the type of offense that you're capable of. Just show me everything that you've been talking about, because that Florida State game was abysmal. There's no other way to put it. It was a terrible, terrible game. And, you need to show that it was a fluke, right? It was a not going to happen again. It was a fluke game. And I thought that they did that. I thought that in almost all facets of the game, I thought that Alabama did do that. Were there still a couple of, penalties and stuff that you'd like to see maybe cleaned up? Sure. I didn't think that it killed really hardly any drives. Two of the penalties that happened were when Keelan Russell kind of threw the touchdown. Or sorry, yeah, when you had a touchdown pass, and so you had a couple of touchdowns like kind of in a row where you had three touchdowns in the same drive, technically, with the way the penalties called stuff off. But I thought that penalties, you technically had more penalties than Louisiana Monroe, more penalty yards. You'd like to see that maybe cleaned up. But overall, I thought that Alabama really controlled all facets of this game. Obviously, Alabama was able to run the ball with really, really solid effectiveness from the passing game. You only had 4 incomplete passes, none out of Ty Simpson, and just 2 out of Austin Mack and Keelan Russell. I thought that overall you had a really, really good game. It did 2 things to me, right? It obviously made me happy to see, made me, confident in like, hey, this team. It made me think that this team is going to turn a corner post Florida State, but also it did kind of upset me because it led me to believe that Florida State game was purely an effort issue. It was not a talent issue. It was purely an effort issue. And that's not something you should have a problem with, right? Effort should never be the issue. And when I say that, it's, from a defensive standpoint, Florida State, obviously ran the ball and they ran it with such effectiveness. And if we're to believe that Kane Womack, because Kane Womack has worked with Gus Malzahn at many facets, if we're to believe that Kane Womack knew what was going to be happening on that side of the ball, and that they had game planned for that, and that maybe the snap count got the guys off or whatever, it still felt like they shouldn't have been playing on their heels at that level. You had guys flying around the field in this game. Obviously, there's a different skill level, different talent gap, but it's still, at the end of the day, when you look across the country, not every team that should have beaten up on the smaller team did, right? You saw Clemson struggle with Troy. You saw Georgia struggle at times. You saw Louisiana or LSU struggle at times. Louisiana Tech. You definitely had teams all across the country that struggled with teams that they ended up winning the game, but they struggled in these games. So just because you're playing a lower level of competition does not mean that you're guaranteed to have this type of blowout, especially a shutout blowout. This is a situation where I thought that Alabama really did what Alabama should have done to this team. Alabama showed what they're capable of, and like I said, because of that, it like I said, it makes me very thankful and very, hopeful for the future of this team. But it also kind of bums me out that, like, why didn't you see this in the Florida State game? Obviously, I do think Florida State is a better team than they got credit for. I think that they've done a really good job rebuilding, and I think some of that's going to be, at the end of the day, credit to Florida State. But some of that's also going to be still what the heck happened, because at the end of the day, Alabama got embarrassed on that field with Florida State. And the reason why all the national media and all the media started talking about the downfall of Alabama was how poorly they played in that game. Later on, we will talk about some of the guys, because I think that we had some really, really good breakout stars in this game, especially when you got a lot of different players in. I want to take this beginning part to kind of just talk about the starters and what I thought about the kind of guys that we're going to be able to take away currently and long term. Especially as we go into the Wisconsin game. We will break down Wisconsin as always. That episode is going to come out on Thursday. I'll record it on Wednesday night. It'll come out on Thursday. But just a heads up, that's what I kind of want to talk about here. And then, like I said, the end part of this episode, I want to talk about the players, because I think there was a lot of players that really showed out in this game that may not be guys that we're going to see a ton, in starting minutes, but you're going to see anytime you see them come in, either in relief of somebody, somebody needs a breather or whatever the situation calls for. Maybe we have a certain package with them. These are guys that you just need to be aware of, because I think that we had quite a few guys that really had really solid games. So, first things first, the guy you have to talk about and sing his praises is Ty Simpson. I thought that Ty Simpson, heard all the criticism from Kalen DeBoer, from Ryan Grubb, about him not throwing the football, him not being on time, and how he kind of handled the pocket last game and worked it to perfection in this game. Ty goes 17 of 17 for 226 and 3 TDs. I thought that his movement in the pocket was phenomenal. Obviously, he had a little bit better clean pocket for a larger percentage of this game. There was one specific throw. I know Clint Lamb posted it, maybe Nick Kelly as well. A bunch of people have posted it, but the throw to Latzir Brooks, where he has a guy coming off of the edge, steps up perfectly, shoulder drop to avoid the rusher, immediately sets his feet, throws it to Latzir. It was textbook footwork in the pocket. I thought that multiple times Ty Simpson had exactly how you coach it, footwork in the pocket. He looked way more comfortable in this game. Again, he doesn't have any incompletions. I thought that he was spreading the ball around the field really well. You had some passes to Kevin Riley out of the backfield. You had some passes to Jeremy Bernard and Latzir Brooks. Again, a guy who stepped up hugely in the absence of Ryan Williams. I think Latzir Brooks is a guy that obviously he played much more in this game because Ryan Williams was out, but he is a guy that you are going to struggle to keep off the field because he is that type of playmaker. He's the guy that you've heard all offseason has that Waddle-like mentality, that Waddle-like playmaking ability. Obviously, the number 17 is part to do with that, the reason why he automatically gets those Waddle comparisons, but he is super shifty. He is a guy that is going to be very, very difficult to keep off the field. Isaiah Horton eventually got some catches. He didn't have the biggest game, but he did have some. Rico Scott got some catches, right? Cuevas continued to be, big in the passing game. I thought that all the guys from the receiving standpoint, it really felt like Ty Simpson was going through his progressions. I think they may have simplified some of the throws for him where it felt more like hand it off or get this throw. But I thought that when he was made to go through his progressions, when he was made to actually, step up in the pocket and make a throw, again, like that Latzir Brooks, like one of the throws he made to Jeremy Bernard that was a deep ball, I thought that he really did a phenomenal job with his movement in the pocket, with how he kind of controlled the line of scrimmage. I thought that Ty had a great game and really, shined in that game. Then we saw Austin Mack come in the second quarter. And this was specifically mentioned by the broadcast that Ty was told this on Thursday that, hey, we're going to give Austin a rep in the second quarter, and he's going to get a drive, and we're going to give him the chance. We think that he's practiced to the level that he deserves it, and Austin's going to get that chance. Austin comes in, he has a great drive, he ends with a touchdown, all goes well. But it was a situation where I thought that that was them just kind of pushing Ty Simpson and pushing that quarterback competition to make both players be the best that they can be. I thought that it was really good. I thought that what you see out of Austin Mack is the dude has a cannon for an arm. He has just insane arm strength. I don't even know who I would describe him from an arm strength perspective. He is a guy that can just absolutely sling the football. I thought that he played well. I thought Austin Mack, he had a little bit of sometimes issue with a little bit of accuracy on a couple of throws, but overall it was not bad. He's just a huge quarterback that I think did a good job when he was in. I thought that, again, it's just kind of pushing Ty Simpson along, and I didn't have any problem with them doing that and kind of setting that up to kind of give Ty Simpson the bump of like, hey, like you are our guy, you are the guy who we're going with, but we're making sure that your backup is prepared because if you falter, we have another guy. And I think that that's something that really is going to help us in the long run because if Ty Simpson gets hurt, obviously you have the guy with the reps and the behind him, but additionally it just makes both quarterbacks know you got to continuously get better. So really happy to see that. Honestly, I thought that he did really good. When we kind of end up, we'll just kind of clear out the quarterback room. Keelan Russell, the dude can spin it. Obviously he's in with a lot of the backups. He throws a touchdown to a guy that if it was a trivia question of does this guy play for Alabama, I doubt anyone gets the answer except for his parents and maybe the current team. MJ Cherwin, he ends up catching a touchdown pass from Keelan Russell, just a phenomenal thread the needle between the corner and the safety pass. He also had kind of a step up, realized that, you got a guy open, step back and throw it to Cole Adams for the touchdown. I thought that overall he had a really, really good showing. It's very clear why this guy was the number one passer coming out. He really has command of the football. It felt very, honestly, more Bryce Young-esque with how he threw the football and how he kind of had command of the pocket. He did do it, obviously, in mop-up duty. This is a situation where he was not against the starters, but I thought that in the passes and in the throws that Keelan Russell had to make, I thought that he made really, really phenomenal throws, and it's clear that this guy in time is going to be the future of Alabama. It reminds me, obviously not in the way that he controlled the pocket, but it reminded me of Tua when you saw him come in like the Louisville game and in some of those games when Jalen Hurts was your starting quarterback and you just saw Tua come in and just spin it and you're like, oh, this guy can throw. Like, this guy is going to be good. That's kind of what you felt with Keelan Russell. Again, it's in mop-up duty. There's not too much you can glean from it, but just how he throws the football, how he had command of the pocket, how he kind of saw the field. Very, very excited for what Keelan Russell is going to be in the future of Alabama because he is going to be a future elite quarterback. Then we got to go through the running back room. I thought that the running backs were phenomenal. Simply put, I thought that the running backs, were another highlight on this team. The way that they have stepped up in Jam Miller's absence, I thought has been really, really good. None bigger than Kevin Riley. Kevin Riley, a guy from Northport, has stepped up in a huge way. He averaged 6 yards a carry. In this game, he really did everything between catching it out of the backfield and how he was hitting gaps and how he was really, exploding through the line. I thought that Kevin Riley has been running really, really well. I saw it in that last game against Florida State. I thought that he was a bit of a highlight in that game, and then he continues it on in this one. Richard Young, did well in pass protection. I thought that he got much better from that standpoint. Didn't have the biggest day running the ball. 6 carries, just averaged 3 yards a carry. So not a huge day running the ball, but did look fine. Obviously, I liked how they also got Dre Washington the ball some. They got Mbakwe the ball out of the backfield some. You did see Ty Simpson and Austin Mack both run the football. Keelan Russell ran the football, right? So they're really getting everybody in on the rushing attack. The other guy that, I was going to save him, but we'll mention him in both segments, is A.K. Deer. A.K. Deer is one of the freshmen, like Keelan Russell, that comes in, and it is clear how he is a top running back. It is clear why he's going to be a guy that plays for a long time at the University of Alabama. He looked really, really good. He looked incredibly fast, and I thought that overall A.K. Deer just was phenomenal, right? I mean, there's no other way to put it. I thought that A.K. Deer was absolutely incredibly fast. He breaks off a 56-yard touchdown run, just lightning speed, and I think that the way he hits the hole I think he's going to be really, really good for Alabama long term. And he's one of those freshmen that kind of shined in this game. I think that when you look at Keelan Russell, you look at A.K. Deere, you look at the way some of these freshmen kind of shined, especially some of the freshmen on defense and stuff kind of shined. I thought that it was a really, really good showing. Also, you get like a guy like Michael Carroll that came in on the offensive line at the right tackle position. I thought that he looked really good in his time. He's a guy that wouldn't shock me if he potentially starts competing for that starting right tackle position before like the end of the season kind of situation. I don't think Wilkin Formby loses that job. But I do think that Michael Carroll is going to push him. I think that Michael Carroll is very, very good, and you really like what you see out of him. Again, another elite freshman that's coming in, and it's very clear what kind of role he's going to play on this team. Then we get to the defense, and the defense is the place where I think they obviously took the biggest step from last week. I thought that you really saw more guys running to the football. The pursuit was substantially better kind of across the board. I think there were a few guys that you kind of want to give a hat tip to specifically with how just incredibly they played. None bigger than James Smith. I thought James Smith was a force in the interior. Obviously missing the two guys in Tim Keenan and my mind just went blank. Tim Keenan and your guy that just tore his ACL. It's going to be out for this, or messed up his knee. I'm sorry, and it's going to be out for the season. Tim Keenan obviously potentially going to be back for that Wisconsin game after his tightrope procedure. But you're really missing, Jeremiah Beeman, right? So Beeman's going to be out for the year, and with Tim Keenan being out, you really had to have somebody step up. And I thought that James Smith was that guy, right? He stepped up. He had 3 tackles for loss. He led the team in that category, had 4 solo tackles, led the team in that category. He just was really, really good on the interior. I thought that he was, for multiple times, I thought he was the best guy on the field from the defensive side of the ball. I thought that he played a really, really good game. Deontay Lawson looked better, right? A lot of things were said about him last week about, he looked really slow, especially with the knee. I thought that he looked substantially better. I thought that Bray Hubbard played a substantially better game. He had 3 solo tackles with a tackle for loss. I thought he had a substantially better game. QB Reese recovered a fumble and forced a fumble. He had a really, really good game. Jordan Renaud, actually, I thought had a crazy good game. His pursuit angles, and he was that number 11 was somebody that I just kept seeing over and over again kind of when you're watching the game. It's just popping up. So I thought that there were quite a few guys that had some big game. Yanze Pierre was another one that had a good game. Keon Sab, right? There were multiple guys who I thought had really good games. In this one, this was a situation where it more was a team defense. They only gave up 142 yards, and that included obviously having all the backups in. This was a situation where Alabama did a very, very good job. They gave up nothing on 4th down, and then they were 6 of 14 is what they gave up on 3rd down. So obviously getting off the field more than you're not. And that includes all the backups that were in. I believe it was later in the second quarter before Louisiana Monroe even got a 1st down. So this was a situation where Alabama really was clicking on all cylinders, especially when the starters were in on defense. And you really like to see that. Again, I understand this is lower level competition, but it's still, you have to do it against whoever's on the schedule. So I was very excited to see that. Okay. This next segment I want to talk about some of the players that, and I talked a little bit about some of them just a second ago, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into